Whether you've been basket weaving for a long time or you're new to basketry, you'll eventually end up with bits and pieces of reed scrap. And in this tutorial, I'm going to go over how to use those scraps to create a scrappy basket, which is basically taking those pieces and creating something useful. This is going to be a 4-part video series, so check back for future videos and check the description below for links to those videos as they come out. And let's dive into this project. To get started with our basket project, you're going to cut out 12 stakes from 5/8 inch wide flat reed and then mark the center with a pencil. So this length is 30 inches. So 12 stakes that are 30 inches long, mark the center, so at 15 inches. You'll put a little mark like this guy to mark that center point, and then you're ready to dunk these in your water to get them damp. So go ahead and set that up, get ready, get your workspace set up, and then let's start weaving this basket. You can source all of the materials in my shop, Textile Indie. I have all of the basket reed that we'll be using today. Spoiler, in upcoming videos, I'll be using dyed reed to weave the walls of this basket. If you want to dye your own reed, I do have a video on dyeing reed. First, grab 6 of these stakes. I'm getting a spoke weight, which is a heavy metal bar, this guy right here. I do sell this in my shop. You can also use a piece of wood or something heavy. Sometimes if I'm desperate, I'll use a hammer because it's a little bit heavier. I'm using this just to get my stakes in place, and actually for this basket, because we're doing a round basket, they're actually called spokes. If you're doing a grid basket, they're called stakes. Okay, all of that said, those center marks are gonna meet up in the center. So I'm laying these down, center marks meeting here in the center. Just this first set of 6 spokes. Laying them out, and then once I have them all laid out, I will adjust the evenness. So I'm putting these down. And then I'll put the spoke weight on top, to hold them down, and make adjustments to make sure that these are all even. Coil up several lengths of 1/4 inch wide flat oval, dunk it in your water bin, tap it off on your work surface, and then grab one of the softer pieces. You can feel them. A softer piece will work well to get the base started. We're going to do a plain weave pattern with this to build this base. This is going to be a continuous weave basket, which means that we're going to build the base in a coil going around and around the basket with a continuous piece of reed, and then we'll do the same to build the walls and then finish this off with a lashed rim. So because this is a series, today's video is going to be covering getting the base set up. We'll take a pause once that's done, and in the next week or two I'll post the next video in the series and you'll be able to start weaving the walls, and then the final episode will be doing the rim. I'm going to weave with the rounded side of the flat oval facing down so that it ends up being to the outside of the basket. I'm going to move this spoke weight to the closest to me side so that I can work on this side, because I find that's easier to do. With the rounded side facing down, I'm going to clamp this to the inside or on top of one of these spokes, and then I'm going to weave under the following spoke like so, and rotate around the basket, tucking it in close to the center, but not too tight because I still need it to be able to move. And because this is so thick, we're going to be playing with how, with the curve to get this to lay somewhat flat. If it curves up a little bit, that's okay. So curving this around. And I'm just weaving under, over, under, over. This guy is not going to get caught in this first turn around, so we'll have to weave it in on the second. I'm going to take out my clamp and weave over top, going under this one and under this next one. Because I'm doing continuous weave, I need to do a stair step. When you have an even number of spokes like we do, in order to continue around, you have to go over 2 at certain points, or in this case, under 2, so that it's over on the outside, in order to get back on plain weave pattern, every other or under over pattern. So now with that first row in place, I will remove the spoke weight and weave, packing this nice and close to that first row, or as close as I can get it. And that first row is standing upright. I'm going to let that do so. I can make adjustments later, but for now I'll just leave it. Okay, so here was my over 2 or under 2. At this point, I'm going to go over 1 here and then over 2 towards the right. So I want under these 2 here and then back on pattern. So weaving around. This is looking kind of loosey-goosey. This is an alternate base style from a twined base or a grid basket where it is square or rectangle, or a cat's head basket. So again, I'm back to the over 2, under 2 pattern. So I'm going to go under these 2 so that I'm over on the outside. And you can see over 2 here, over 2 here, over 2 here. So that as I go around the basket, I'm spiraling around. Clamp this to the inside of the basket so you can see your end. And then we'll press these rows down, try to get them to lay flat as we can. They won't lay entirely flat because of the nature of the flat oval reed. So splice in a new length of weaver when you've run out. And to do that, my weavers just fell on the ground. To do that, we're going to back up and weave over top. I'm going to trim this end down so that it is sitting on top of a spoke, and then cover that up and weave backwards so that I can tuck this new starting end under the 4th stake over. So I'm going to tuck it behind this row here, clamp that in place, and then tuck this on top like that so that the end is hidden behind this spoke and hiding the other end of the weaver here. Okay, and then weave around. And I'm doing that over 2, or in this case, under 2, every row. And this end is where I did the splicing or the overlap, so I'm going to make sure that gets tucked in. Spiral around. Again, here I am. I need to go under these 2 to get that stair step pattern. Make sure this lays flat. And we'll do an adjustment to the outside here in a second. So keep going around, around, around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, now flip it over to the outside. We can press on these rows. And from the outside, this is looking fairly good. It's not lying perfectly flat, but that's okay for the structure of this basket. I'm going to adjust my center so that's more of a circle. And now let's test the new spokes and see if we have room in between these spokes here. So again, center mark facing up, and it looks like I do have enough space to get the weaver in between these spokes here, so I'm going to set these in, rotating around the basket, lining up the center mark of these spokes with the center mark of the previous spokes, and you end up with quite a pile here in the center, so it's fairly thick right here. So those are spaced out. And again, if you want to, you can use your spoke weight to hold things in place for you, and then get back to weaving, incorporating these new spokes. So I'm going to pull my weaver to the top and start weaving these new spokes in place. Coming up here, trying to get onto a pattern where you can weave over top of the new spokes so that they get held in place. And you're going to press that row right up against previous rows, like so. Over to here, under two. Okay, I'm going to go under these two here and back on top. And now I'm going to do one more row incorporating these new spokes into my base. So pack your row nice and tight. If you need to work out some of the ease, pull on your weaver. And I'll cut this on top here because I just ran out. So to splice, again, grab a new length, make sure it's damp, and then back it up. So, whoa, came all undone here. Weave this back in place. So I'm going to cover up this end with my new length, layer it on top so that the end gets covered up, and then tuck it behind and on top of that layer right here on that spoke. Now rotate around and weave over top. Clamp this in place. Pull tight. Okay, once you have that second row incorporating the last set of spokes, press down on your weavers, pack things tight. You want the rows nice and tight together. You can use your straight tip packer for this. Come in and press your rows close together if you don't want to use your fingers. And then if you want to check the bottom, you can flip it over again and press out any looseness. Come in and make sure that bottom row or center bottom row, this first row you did, is nice and flat or circular. Make adjustments. It's okay if they're on their side a bit, because as we weave the walls of the basket, we're going to curve up, and that will either gently lay flat up against the reed or sit up straight like it is, and it will just give it a little bit of a prop to sit on. Come in and make sure your rows are tight, and we'll continue to adjust this tightness packing situation as we weave, because as it shrinks or as it dries, it shrinks, and we'll keep an eye on that throughout the process. So that is how to set up a base with plain weave. This is different than the twined base that I teach often, or a grid base that I've taught here on YouTube before. So it's a little different style. Sign up for my email update list for more on basketry. You can use the link in the description below. Like and subscribe, watch this video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.